Dear Madam, I regret exceedingly to inform you that an official report has been received to the effect that Major Talbot Mercer Papineau, Military Cross, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, was killed in action October the 30th, 1917.
He was hit by a shell in the stomach. He died instantly. No one saw him fall. They hadn't found his body until 3 weeks later. A crew of men went out to look and see if they could find any familiar bodies. And it was actually led by one of his best friends. They were looking for him. Inside a shell hole that was covered in water, they saw 2 legs sticking up with the puttees reversed. And this is how he had always worn his. And so they pull it out to realize that the top half of his torso has been blown off. But, I mean, they knew just by looking at it that it was him. And when they checked his pockets, it confirmed his identity. He was buried there that day.
He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die.
Goodbye, old friend.
He could have done so much for our country, but he was killed. And I mean, coming on this trip and seeing all these sights and actually going through what he did and what he went through, it was like being in his shoes. I feel like when I talk about his death, it chokes me up because I feel like I feel like I've actually lost someone that's really close to me.
In a subsequent battle, Papineau's grave is destroyed. His remains are never found.
Talbot Papineau had a vision going into the war and thinking that if French Canadians and English Canadians could fight a war together, then they should be in unison in the homeland. And this is one of the reasons that he went into the war.
While Papineau was fighting overseas, he was missed terribly by his mother Caroline, but also by a woman named Beatrice who had fallen in love with him through the letters that they wrote to each other through the war. There's a song called God Send You Back to Me, which we'd like to sing today in honor of those 2 women who waited patiently at home for him to return, and in the end he never did. Love, you have left me weary and lonely, sailing so far away. Oh, how I miss you. Daily I'm praying, safely you'll come home someday. God send you back to me over the mighty sea. Dearest, I want you near. God dwells above you, knows how I love you. He will
At the top of Passchendaele Ridge, what was once a German machine gun bunker is now a Canadian cemetery. The Canadian Corps paid a high price, first at Vimy, then here at Passchendaele, where they suffered 16,000 dead and wounded. But the capture of these two ridges ensured that Canada would be a British colony no more.
Our victory as a complete corps, as a national army, allowed our cabinet in Ottawa to introduce a brand new cabinet objective for this war. Before, all Canada's objectives were simply the objectives of England. We now introduced another national objectives to the British cabinet, and that was either equality within the empire or autonomy. You must give us one or the other. And now, this is interesting. It's not based on because we're nice people who cut down lumber and catch fish, but because we had a fighting corps without which you will not win this war. And if you mistreat us, if you don't take into account how important we are as equal partners, we might reconsider our whole participation here.
Robert Borden was Prime Minister of Canada during the years of the Great War and is scarcely remembered. Some believe this should not be so. Most of the sensitive records of the First World War have been destroyed, or incredibly, are still secret 90 years later. But a few years back, an extraordinary account of Borden confronting the British Prime Minister was released.
The British leadership is a catastrophe.
You're absolutely certain? They were that confused they turned and fired on Canadians?
Sir, I was there.
Thank you, General.
According to those present, Prime Minister Borden comes to the Imperial War Cabinet an angry man. The catastrophe of Passchendaele is haunting Borden and British Prime Minister Lloyd George.
I sent for General Currie and ordered him to tell me the truth, as far as he understood it, with respect to the occurrences at Passchendaele. Whenever the Canadian Corps was called upon to attack, General Currie always had his attacking troops in the trenches 36 hours before the time fixed for the attack, in order that officers and men might become acquainted with the ground and learn precisely where the objective lay. On one of his flanks, a British battalion came into their trenches the night before the attack. 4 companies wandered over to the Canadians in the morning and asked the Canadians where they should go. 2 of these companies stationed themselves at a point which proved to be in the path of the artillery barrage. When the barrage lifted, these 2 companies became non-existent, and the 2 supporting companies, in their confusion, attacked the Canadians. I promise you, sir, if there is ever the threat of a repeat of Passchendaele, not a single Canadian soldier will leave our shores.
It's staggering, really. It's a very Canadian confrontation.